Imagine for just a second a life built entirely on a hollow foundation, just nothing underneath. In today's Explainer, we're diving into a deeply philosophical and honestly pretty grim dark fable called Shadows at the Great Noon. You can think of it as a graphic novel of the mind. It completely unmasks the facade of our structured modern lives, and we're going to follow one person's terrifying, but as you'll see, profoundly necessary descent straight into the dark void.
We kick off this explainer from a really chilling perspective, the voice of the repressed shadow itself. This is the silent rot speaking directly to our protagonist, a character known as the Stargazer. Now, the Stargazer is suffering from this deep, unrecognized emptiness. And this shadow, it isn't some external monster under the bed, it's the honest guest that the protagonist has desperately tried to evict from his own mind. It's shifting, it's stretching, and it's bringing forth all these buried memories to weave a tale of the protagonist's own undoing. But to truly grasp our protagonist's descent, we really need to define the core existential illness driving this whole fable: psychic decay. Now, this isn't a physical sickness. It's a state where all genuine substance is just gone. By constantly living a hollow performance, a person literally turns into a ghost of their own making. They have, quite simply, forgotten how to be solid. So let's look at exactly how this condition gets exposed. All right, part one, the zenith of Great Noon. Our story starts at a moment of totally inescapable illumination, right as the Stargazer invites what the text calls the Great Noon. Here, the zenith of the sun isn't framed as this nice source of warmth. It's an interrogator. As the sun climbs to its absolute highest point, the air actually thickens with the scent of stagnant time. The light becomes too honest. It permits absolutely no facades, violently stripping away our daily illusions and exposing the hollow performances we cling to so desperately. This brings us to the parable of the shadowless man. Our Stargazer stands right in the town square, boldly boasting about his meaningful life. He fully expects glory, right? He honestly believes this blinding light of the Great Noon is finally going to validate his brilliance for the whole world to see. But it actually brilliantly illustrates how a life built on a hollow performance results in a complete lack of genuine substance. The light doesn't bounce off him. It passes straight through him. He is so devoid of reality that he casts absolutely no shadow. And this immediately forces us into the frantic internal dialogue of our protagonist. Think about it. If the light of the Great Noon is absolute and it's shining directly on him, why is he physically absent? The horrifying realization hits him. He is just psychic decay. He has forgotten how to be solid. Which leads us to part two, lighting the empty flares. Terrified by this sudden, gaping void, our protagonist retreats into absolute blackness to try and manufacture his own light. This builds into this obsessive routine in the parable of the empty flare. The man is sitting in a pitch-black room, completely terrified. So what does he do? He spends his entire inheritance on these brilliant flares. He lights them one by one just to convince himself the room is filled with treasures. He calls this desperate act virtue signaling. It's a completely empty performance for an audience of none, just a frantic attempt to ward off the encroaching dark. But here is the crucial point. When those flares inevitably sputter out, the darkness isn't just empty, it is hungry. His manufactured light, this false sense of purpose, hadn't actually illuminated anything real. It had merely masked his own inner decay, completely blinding him to the horrifying truth that he was the only thing rotting inside that room. Let's move to part three. The gilded scaffold collapses. Realizing the flares are failing to keep the dark at bay, the protagonist transforms into an architect. He starts desperately building outward to escape his inward reality. We see this in the parable of the gilded scaffold. It's a perfect juxtaposition showing the tension between the masterpiece of modern humanity he projects and the sinkhole of existential emptiness he actually stands on. He spends his life building this towering outward structure, a huge monument of busy schedules, societal accolades, moral postures, and constant fake direction. But every new floor he adds is really just a distraction from the groaning of the earth below. And the thing is, you can only build so high on a rotten foundation. Under the stark, honest light of the Great Noon, the facade just can't hold anymore. The sheer weight of his own inauthenticity literally transforms into an unbearable physical burden. The entire gilded scaffold he spent his whole life constructing collapses directly into the inner rot he tried so incredibly hard to bridge. Part 4. The shadow arrives unbidden. Amidst the utter ruins of his outward structure, the protagonist tries one last desperate performance to maintain some sense of control. He hosts a dinner party. In the parable of the unwelcome guest, he invites all these virtues to dinner. He's trying to bury his mounting dread under polite conversation and the illusion of a well-organized life. But he can't escape this one burning question, because there is someone at the table who really doesn't fit in. This guest arrives completely unbidden. It appears as a silent, shifting shadow just sitting there among the virtues. It doesn't eat, it simply watches the host frantically perform his goodness. The host tries his hardest to ignore it, but as it turns out, the guest is not an invader at all. It's the honest, repressed substance of the host himself, finally pulling up a chair to the table. The rot he constantly pushed away is now staring him right in the face. When the shadow finally breaks its silence, it delivers this absolutely devastating diagnosis. Just let that sink in for a second. The protagonist's entire identity, his virtues, even his struggles, it's all completely synthetic. He has distanced himself so far from his true nature that he doesn't even own his own pain anymore. Now we reach part 5, the ghost of psychic decay. Stripped of his flares, his gilded scaffold, and his dinner party virtues, our protagonist has to confront the paralyzing fear of meaninglessness head-on. This is the parable of the only ground. In the sort of inverted hero's journey, the traveler desperately seeks a path across the void. He's trying to cure his psychic decay by stepping on traditional milestones. He reaches out for the solid rock of faith. He grasps for the structure of a career. He clings to the idea of a lasting legacy. But he finds that they simply do not exist for him. They're all just more borrowed costumes. He finds only the void. Exhausted by a lifetime of pretending, all of his outward appearances completely unravel. With nowhere else left to step, he plunges straight into the very inner rot he had spent his entire life naming as evil and pushing away. The descent is complete. Which brings us to our final act, part 6, standing on honest ground. This descent isn't just a grim ending, it brings us to the final, terrifying, yet deeply profound realization of our fable. In the absolute depths of his psychic decay, after every single other thing is shattered, he makes a startling discovery. The corruption he feared and ran from his entire life, it's the only foundation that is actually real. It's literally the only thing that didn't collapse under the honest light of the great noon. So the ultimate takeaway from this explainer is a massive shift in existentialist logic. In the world of the stargazer, looking up to the heavens for validation only makes you hollow. You only find solid footing when you finally acknowledge your own decay as your own. To become solid again, to cure that psychic decay, you have to stop reaching for the stars and begin to stand upon your own honest corruption. I'm going to leave you with this final thought to carry with you today. Take a good hard look at the scaffolds you are building right now. Look at the schedules, the virtues you perform, the flares you light in the dark. Ask yourself, what sinkholes are you trying to cover up? Are those structures actually bridging the void, or are they just delaying your inevitable descent into the honest ground beneath?